All right, everybody. Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Armchair Sports Universe weekly recap. I'm joined by my co-host Steelbacker,
Hello, everybody.
and so we've been gone for a few weeks, so we got a little bit of catching up to do. But we're gonna dig right into it. We're gonna start with a little fun topic: the Armchair Football League. We're gonna power rank the top secondaries. Steel, hit me with your list.
So this one's kind of tough. I thought, I had a kind of clear list coming into it, and then I realized I forgot a team, and I was like, well, they have to be in here. And then I realized I forgot another team, and so I'm gonna do five. And so I'm gonna do the Cowboys at one. Their safeties are pretty mid, but they have six of them, so they can kind of just keep playing them and get some different skill sets out there. But the corners, man, are insane.
Yeah.
They traded a third for Dantzler for him to be their fourth best. This makes sense to use an upgrade on him or anything because he's literally barely playing. And they also have safeties who are around the same level at slot corner if they want to do it.
Yeah.
So I didn't like the trade for him, but because they went out and got Fuller right afterwards. He got a pick last week. No, 2 weeks ago. Was it last week? Yeah, it was last week, I think. I don't know. He got a pick in one of the games. And then Sertan and Diggs both have acrobat, and Diggs has the outside one, and Sertan has the one step ahead. So both of them are awesome in man coverage, at least on the outside. And that's just scary.
Yeah.
What it is.
Have Sertain and Diggs been upgraded yet too?
Sertan has been. Diggs has not really gotten up that
Okay.
much in real life. I don't think he's going to end up getting upgraded, but he's like an 86 with the ability you want to get to 94.
Right.
He came with. So it's like, you're fine. You're good with that. Sertan was the one that needed to hit 90 to get the ability.
Right.
And he did. He just hit 90. So he didn't even have 90 against the Packers. He had an awesome game against the Packers. So that's fun.
Yeah.
But their outcomes have been lower. Like overall, they have not shut down the pass as well as some of the other teams on the list. But I feel like their ceiling in a playoff game specifically is insane.
Yeah.
Like they took out Devontae Adams and they didn't even put Adams on Sertan's side. They put him on Diggs, the weaker of the matchups, and Diggs wipes him off the face of the planet for a full game.
Yeah, I mean it's when you look at it, they don't. You look at the ratings, like they don't blow you out of the water or anything like that. But I think now they do with Sertain getting bumped up. But outside of that, it's just like it doesn't look that impressive. Like you'd expect it to. They're performing at a level you'd expect like the Bills to perform at. I think, which is great, and I think that Diggs maybe comes along a little bit more with the Madden ratings. But to have them also cheap too is just a huge thing for a huge uh, ability for them going forward to continue to create around them in their roster and maybe add some safeties. So I agree with you. My list, I was looking at your list. My list probably isn't that much different from you. So the Cowboys are my number one too. The Bills are up there, but I don't think it's funny that I don't think they're performing quite to the level that you'd expect out of what they have. But
yeah, my second team performing really well. I think the best passing defense in the league, but is the Jaguars. I think the thing that holds them back from being the top team for me, even though they have performed this way, is that Fuller doesn't have the abilities to make the big plays on the ball. So he's the guy that in the Sims has been almost hunted. It's like they know, which they don't. But he's been somewhat of a weak link, which is weird because he is rated so good. But just because there's only so much you can do against the Devontae Adams and stuff, if the Packers did what they did to the Cowboys against the Jaguars, I think they would have success.
Yeah.
Because Devontae Adams would win some of those 50-50 balls that he didn't win any of against Diggs.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the difference between them. But I wouldn't feel great going against the Jag secondary. They force a ton of turnovers.
Yeah, and it's like I mean, I think you had you said it perfectly with Fuller. If he can just get some abilities, they have a lethal cornerback room with Gilmore as well. I think that they probably need. I mean, they're fine with Mike Hughes. He's a solid slot cornerback. If they could find maybe a slightly better one. Actually, you know what? I take that back. Mike Hughes is good enough. Like the difference that you're going to get from a 78 overall cornerback to an 81 overall cornerback is probably not going to be that much different. So I agree. I think the key is just you hope for a breakout game for Kendall Fuller to maybe create the ability to get him some superstar abilities or something like that. But yeah, it's to me the thing that's really holding their defense up. I'm not sure how Eric Armstead and Josh Allen are doing in the sim. I mean, they're quality, they have a good pass rush, but I think it's the secondary is the thing that's really putting them over the top, and it kind of proves the flaw with the Bills. I think that part of the reason why their secondary isn't quite performing up to the level that you'd hope is because they don't really have the pass rush, so guys just have time to find receivers downfield. So if you find the pass rush, you get that production.
This has pretty much been a symbiotic relationship between secondary and pass rush.
Yeah.
They've done a good job of having pass rush good enough. I don't think anybody's particularly blowing it up, but I think Josh Allen has about 10 sacks.
Okay.
He got an expected breakout in there, so he had a big week. Melvin Ingram had a sack for them, I think, already, and Armstead's kind of been hit and miss, but he's been pretty solid overall. But yeah, they have guys that are making enough plays in the front and getting pressure. But yeah, their secondary is getting them the extra coverage sacks and that kind of thing that you need.
Yeah.
Next up, I got the Bills. This is another one that the outcome isn't necessarily meeting the ceiling, but similar to the Cowboys, they are showing up in sim games. They shut down Packers pretty much too. Adams had a good day still because they have the same thing as kind of the Jaguars, where it's Teron Johnson on the other side who is fine, not as good, but he's pretty solid. But he just got torched in a matchup that really anybody should get torched is Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
And so I think Trey White's been a little bit quieter as of late. He had a big week 4. He got 3 picks, but then after that it's been a little quiet. But their safeties, it's the inverse of kind of everybody else on this list so far. Their safeties are very, very good. So they build it from their safeties to their corners.
Yeah.
And that can get them turnovers in the right kind of situation.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is like you have Poyer, like the cornerbacks, like you said, they're not. There is that difference. Like you have White on one side who has the abilities and everything you said, but you're right. Like the difference is that other teams have safeties in like the high 70s, low 80s, which is still very good. But they have two guys who I think Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer both have abilities, right?
Poyer does not.
Oh wow, he doesn't. Huh? Wow.
He's 90 overall, but doesn't have abilities.
That's weird. But yeah, so I mean, if you have a 90 overall and then a guy on the other side who's a 91 overall with abilities, it's going to be really hard to throw deep on you. And I think there's a lot of teams, especially in the stream games, where the quarterback does look to throw deep, and that it's just you're not going to be able to on these guys with those safeties and with White. Like you have to just pick on Teron Johnson and the slot, whoever Greedy Williams, I think, is their slot cornerback. So like you kind of just have to feast on those guys all game. But I think that's what you'll see more of an impact in the fast forward games, the recap games against the Bills. But when you get into the stream games, I think they perform better in the stream games, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They really shut down the Packers, especially. It's kind of their marquee game.
Yes. So I think that's the thing is just like because the stream has those deep passing plays, and I don't know what the solution is. Like if you're going against them, I don't know if it's like you focus on deep passing to increase the likelihood that you complete those passes, or if you focus on like short passing just to make sure that you hit those passes, and then maybe you don't need the big ones because you're moving the ball down the field.
Yeah, I think they're definitely a team that is tough to beat over the top. It's the death by 1,000 cuts thing.
Yeah.
But like you can't really do that against their offense when they're clicking. So
yeah, exactly.
Right now the people because their offense hasn't put it together, but their defense has done a sufficient job with what the offense should be expected to be. Their weakness is not the secondary at all. I put them third because their secondary is gonna kill it. But it's just the front seven. We may talk out it for like Achilles heel thing we do later, but
but the other thing too is like if you throw it short on them because you're trying to pick on Greedy Williams or Teron Johnson, like they have good linebackers in coverage. They're not like great. Like they're good enough rating wise to be able to be there in those short passing game plays to at least limit the damage. Like you're not going to get a bunch of yards after catch, I think, if you're going over the middle on these guys.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Moving on. This is the team I forgot about when I was listening. I'll say it. We'll keep their chip on their shoulder, I guess. I got to the end and realized that I didn't include Darius Slay and Tyrann Mathieu, and I'm like, well, they're definitely on it. Because it's like, I was thinking, like, oh, well, they really don't have anything else. But I reflected on it after I said it, after I wrote it the first time, and I was like, okay, Tyrann Mathieu has like 6 interceptions, Slay similar, and also leads the AFC in pass deflections. They are making plays everywhere. But you expect that from those guys. Every team who has those guys, you expect it. But Jason Verrett had an awesome game last week. Like, cannot say enough how awesome that game was. They attacked him over and over again down the field, one-on-one, and he was just deflecting everything. So maybe not going to be a super high like turnover forcing guy, but like that's what we talked about was missing from like the Jaguars and that kind of thing. Like, so well, they're kind of getting torched when they go to number 2. But like Verrett was making plays, so maybe Verrett is going to just play out of his mind and shut down that side for him. And that's going to be huge. And then also, speaking of making plays, Juan Thornhill got a superstar breakout and has been playing really good at free safety. So another guy that wouldn't exactly be expected to, but I guess the effect of having 2 just all-world players play at the top of their game around them, they're making plays.
Yeah, it's funny because I see that they have the Anthony Harris, who's an 80 overall free safety. Is he hurt?
He's not hurt. He just plays third.
That's interesting that they.
He was starting for a bit, but I think an injury flipped them again. Because Thornhill is listed at free safety, Harris is strong safety.
Okay.
And then Thornhill got like a pick 6.
Okay.
And got a breakout. So they played him again. Then he accomplished the breakout, and now obviously you're starting superstar. So Harris, I think, plays a little bit of linebacker, plays a little bit of slot. He kind of moves around.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I mean that's a game changer. I mean being able to have that's a huge break in your season because it's true like having an 80 overall safety is actually a pretty crucial thing, especially on the deep balls, because you want somebody that's close to, if not over, some of those thresholds where some of those numbers on even the elite receivers are mitigated a little bit. If the receiver has abilities, you're not going to be able to come down with it. But if you put an 80 overall safety on an 88 overall receiver who doesn't have abilities, the odds that the safety wins that battle, I feel like, are probably more in favor of the safety, especially depending on who the quarterback is and whatnot. But so having a guy over that threshold at the safety position is pretty huge. I'm assuming that is Thornhill over an 80?
he's not over an 80 in like zone, but he's an 80 overall.
Okay.
He's he's young too, so he
Yeah.
may get another overall, maybe hit the threshold. But
Well, the key thing,
ability,
yeah,
puts him in the spot if active, would be the big thing.
that's what I was gonna say. Is like I think Anthony Harris, like I'm sure that he was probably close to, if not over, the threshold for the safety position. So like you were getting solid play out of him. But now that you have a guy who's close to him in rating but has the abilities are more impactful than being over the threshold. So I think that's what gives Thornhill the edge. And I think that it's just like it's kind of what we talked about with the Bills. Like they have they have the Slay on one side, they have Verrett on the other, but you have now two very impactful safeties. And I think just again, like teams are so looking to hit those deep balls. Even in real life, we're seeing this trend where teams are going more too high safeties. Like I think the trend of safeties carrying more weight is gonna swing back because teams are going into it being like, well, if we just take away the deep ball and force these guys to throw in rhythm and on timing, and they're not really equipped to do that, a lot of them anymore. So
yeah, I definitely agree.
So I think that it's just like if you're focusing on the safeties and mitigating the deep balls is going to be a huge trend in the next like 2 to 4 years. Um, so is there another player on the Chiefs? Anybody else on the Chiefs you want to talk about, or
that was pretty much all of their main secondary components. Yeah. They got some solid like depth corners, but like those guys are just. I mean, if they're making a play, it's just one that was thrown right at them.
Yeah.
That's like those are the guys you want to talk about because that first 4 to 5 is what's putting them in the situation. Along with the pass rush that isn't getting sacks but is getting pressure enough, which was last year the problem. They were like negative in sacks, so which sucks with the guys they have. But oh well. Maybe anyway, last team and these last 3, I'll mention my honorable mentions after them. But I was kind of like torn on where to go with them. I ended up going with a team with better corners, at least ability wise. I went with Packers. I think their safeties are pretty solid. We talked about safeties thing. They got to be solid safeties and big plays. Amos I like a lot. I think he's making plays for them. Not necessarily. I mean, safeties are hard to show up on the stat sheet in general, but I feel like he's making plays for them pretty fast. His zone coverage is really good, so I feel like he's kind of flying around for him, covering a lot. Savage is fine. Jackson's been playing awesome as a rookie, but then it's Jair and William Jackson is the big two. They both got abilities. Jair is one of the top corners in the game, 99 man coverage right now. Like that's why they got here, is because they have the best player of anybody in these next 3, and they have plenty of options to go to.
Yeah, it's. I'm surprised to see them not performing at more of like an elite level. Like I'm surprised that they're not one of the better performing secondaries in the league because, like you said, you got Amos at an 88, and then like you said, Scene's playing well. And usually, like those low, like the 75. If you're a rookie and you're in like your high 70s, I feel like you usually perform pretty well. That's like across all sports too. Like in video games, like if you take a 78 overall rookie power forward and a 78 overall like 7-year vet, the 78 overall rookie is going to put up better numbers. It's like the game recognizes that they're a young player.
Yeah, it's like it gives a little bit of a phantom boost.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's like kudos to them for the Jackson Hill pick. How's he playing in real life too?
He hasn't really played much.
That's what I thought.
Which is so weird. I think he started to play a little more, but like there was clearly a way to do it.
Yeah.
Different discussion, but like 3 safeties is very common, and they just didn't do it for a while. It's like, they must not have like thought Jackson was like ready to like handle like that role, but like that's not great for a first round pick to handle like a rotational role out the gate.
Yeah.
But
like you said, like they have the best cornerback in this bunch, so you'd expect him to maybe carry a little bit more weight, especially because they have a very good pass rush. So I think it's just a matter of like maybe their scheme or playbook choices maybe limiting his impact, maybe, but it could just be like they're not going his way in the stream games a lot, so his impact isn't quite as huge. They're targeting like William Jackson and stuff like that.
Yeah, they have a lot of guys getting interceptions just in general. Like all of their rotation guys that come in seem to get a pick in the game they come in. But so they're doing a good job forcing turnovers. But I just think that there's more like potential for them to stop the yardage they're allowing.
Yeah.
I think the linebackers owe a lot of the fault in some of that. The middle of the field is pretty open for them right now. But there's only so much a secondary can do. I put them there just because the best player, the ceiling there.
Yeah.
But my 2 honorable mentions were myself and the Ravens. The Ravens have a similar taste to the Packers, where it's like you got a good safety in Jimmy Ward, and then you got Humphrey and Peters making plays. Peters not having abilities is why they didn't make it. If Peters had abilities, I definitely would put him there because he's better rated than William Jackson, and Humphrey I feel like can do enough of the similar things as Jair. That he can make it happen. But Peters plays like he has abilities, but like sometimes like, can you trust it if he doesn't actually have them? Peter's got that dog in him. The Sim knows it. But they're probably my first honorable mention. And then myself, I have a similar case to the Bills, except for I don't have Trey White. So that's I think the reason why I had myself in it at first, but I kind of thought about it more. It's like, okay, the safeties part of it is why I was there. 2 ability safeties that can cover the deep halves. I've got Minka, who's got acrobats to make plays. But the problem with safeties is that they just won't always have an opportunity to make a play.
Yeah.
or like a pick or something like that. Like corners have a lot more of those one-on-one interception opportunities where safeties are usually coming over and the defensive back will get it from them, or the receiver will, or they'll get there like a step late because they had to come all the way across the field. So I think if we were trying to say that I was the best secondary, I would have had to have had like Justin Simmons or something as the safety instead of John Johnson, who is rated well and has the abilities, but like he's not quite that guy.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's you look at the Ravens, and it's funny that you guys both in the same division. You both kind of have the same build. The Ravens are surprising. You got Marlon Humphrey and you've got Marcus Peters, and again, it's just where they have Jimmy Ward too as a strong safety. So like they're actually probably more confusing to me as I think about it more, because they have two really good cornerbacks in Humphrey and Peters. They have a good safety. Maybe the free safety, Deshaun Elliott, who's a 78. Like that's not bad either. So I don't know where that lack of performance from them is coming in. I think that it might be the slot cornerback.
It's just depth overall. If one of those guys is out to play, it's just they don't really have.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, looking at it now, they're.
But like other than that, it's just like you're not having the depth that these guys do rotate in. I think that's another feather in the Packers cap is that they do have like 8, 7 overall players who come into play, and they all can make a play for them. So it's like you'll see it's like, oh, Nick Scott got a pick week 1. Like that's weird, right?
Yeah.
Like they'll step in and make a play when they need to. And I don't think the Ravens guys are doing that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at I'm looking at the ratings, the ratings right now on the roster sheet. The next highest overall safety that they have, cornerback that they have is a 71. So you're going from an 80. If you have Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters in on the same play, and then Marcus Peters comes out, you're going from having an 86 overall cornerback playing across Marlon Humphrey to a 71. That's a massive drop off, and that's just like you're right. Like if you can just kind of like if this was real life and you're kind of game planning, or if Madden had allowed you to like really get specific with your game plan, you're just kind of biding your time until one of those guys goes off to catch some rest. Because if they do, you're just targeting whoever replaces them.
Yeah, and that's the tough part. But like the upside is still there. Like if you're in a playoff game, you couldn't pull Peters and Humphrey out of the game for any reason at all. They were gonna fight. So like you're not gonna have to worry about that weakness unless something happens. But like it's just your power ranking. You're not really gonna pick that. You're just like, well, got it.
I wonder if the key to beating the Ravens is just going with like find the playbook where you throw the ball a ton and focus on like short passing or something like that, or focus on like inside runs so that the run plays are successful, and then like you're passing the ball so much that it just tires those guys out and gets them off the field.
You gotta get as many 5 wide receiver sets out there as possible.
Yeah. So you just target the slot cornerbacks, but then like you sneak in a couple like QB runs or something like that gets the quarterbacks into a tackling animation and gets them like, oh, I gotta step off for a few plays because I'm hurt.
You gotta put some practice squad guys out there at 2 outside receivers and just send them on go balls all day.
Yeah.
And running 3 wide receiver routes, but running Humphrey and Peters.
You just run like 4 wide receiver sets and do like wide receiver screens all day until they go out with it.
You're putting like a tackle out there, a slot wide receiver to go out and hit one of those dudes.
Yeah, exactly.
Send a big ass dude after him.
That's the new strategy. I wish we had that level of
control.
Yeah. like you can script your
literally tight end, so I can do stuff like that. But I just figured that's a little too cheesy.
Like I wish they let you script your first 10 plays. All 10 plays are wide receiver screens.
We haven't seen any wide receiver screens in the sim except for one
that
I saw a quarterback throw in the dirt. Other than that, I haven't seen any. So that's a screen market there.
Yeah.
We got the back screens pretty well covered.
All right, so we're gonna skip on to we're gonna stay in the ACFL, but we're gonna go to this next topic. We're gonna get specific, just covering this one single team because I think it warrants it. I think when you went into this season, you look at the roster, you look at the Rams, and you say that's a Super Bowl team. That is a team that has solidly rated players all across the field. They have. It's not like they're super top heavy where they just have no depth behind their talented rated players. So when you see them lose this past week and fall to 500, and they lose to the Saints, a team who they have a roster with enough impact players that they can steal a game like this, but you'd expect them to steal a game against a good team that maybe doesn't have the depth or has a huge positional weakness or something like that. You just don't expect the Rams to lose to the Saints. So my question is that indicative of their window being done?
I don't think so. Because they are almost a lock to make the dance anyway.
Yeah.
Because he is awful. I was predicting the Giants to make the playoffs. It might be the Lions instead, which was my preseason prediction. But it's going to be like a 9-win team or an 8-win team in the playoffs. Like, it's not looking great for the playoffs for the NFC wildcard. And as a result, they're pretty much a lock to make it.
Yeah.
The Cardinals took an awful loss to the Niners, who have been pretty bad.
Yeah.
And the Rams, in a sim game, have beat the Cowboys. They're the only team to do it, and they beat them handedly.
Yeah.
So, it's out there. And they can go on Nick Foles run at the end and pull it off. Their path is the exact same as I was expected to be. They lost Cup, so that hurts their offense for now. So
Yeah.
you kind of explain away the loss this week as well. They didn't have Cub, and really, without Cub, you're kind of throwing to AJ Green or Van Jefferson. Those guys are fine, but like you got to find outcome
Yeah.
over 20 points. Like, and they haven't been as good in these past 6 games because Aaron Donald isn't breaking shot in these as much. And he is the lead league in sacks and tackle for losses. Or maybe not tackle for losses. I think he's like third in tackles. But yeah.
So I think that the reason why the question popped into my head is because I don't think that they're like done this year. Like they still have a talent, they still have a roster talented enough to contend and do some damage once the playoffs start. I think that for one, I know that they have switched their scheme and their playbook around a lot. And I think this is why, like, I implore teams to understand what your team is. Like, have the idea of what you want your team to look like for next season going into the off season. Have a plan for what you want your team to look like. If it so happens that the moves that you have to make dictate something different, then so be it. But make a choice about like what you want your main scheme and your main playbook to be, and just stick with it up until a certain point. If you lose like 4 games in a row, then maybe you switch. But I think that the problem is that I feel like I see teams or teams across this league where they'll try a scheme in a playbook and they'll lose. They won't even be a bad game. They'll just lose, and then they'll switch it and they'll try something different, and they'll lose that game. And they're like, well, what's the problem? Like I just can't find the scheme in the playbook. It's like you got to give it some time. Like if you're gonna change your scheme in your playbook, you got to give it like 3 games before you really make a decision on what you commit to. And you can't just go off of the win-loss result. You have to look at like what players played well in the sim, what players didn't, and then go from there. Because it could just be like you went 1-2 because you played 3 really good teams. You know what I mean? So I think that there's got to be some learned discipline across the league in that sense. And I think that might be the thing that maybe hurts the Rams. I could be totally wrong on that. But the other reason why it popped into my head is because you consider the amount of draft picks that the Rams have spent. You consider the amount of cap space that the Rams have spent putting this roster together. And you see where it's gotten them now 2 years in a row. You see where it's like, I can't remember what they were last year. I think they were about 500. I think I could be wrong on that. I'm just checking real quick because we have them from last year. Last year they went 9-8. So okay. Yeah, so it's very likely that they're probably going to go 8-9 or 9-8 again. And I think that the problem I have is when you look at how much cap, the circus that is going to be finding the cap space this offseason is going to be a massive headache. Like you're going to spend so much time trying to fix your cap, and you're not going to have any young players really to bring in because you've traded all your draft picks away, and you don't really have any backup options because you traded your previous draft picks away. I don't know, some of that wasn't on them, some of that was on the in real life Rams trading some of these picks away. But it's like at a certain point, do you just say enough is enough? And you bail. And that's why I wonder if their window might be done after this year. Because I wonder if you just, and regardless of if it's the same ownership, I just wonder if you go into the offseason and you say, I just can't do another year of this. I'm not going to spend my offseason trying to create cap space to make small, tiny moves, only to go 9-8 and not make the Super Bowl again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was always a realistic possibility. It
Yeah.
depends on what happens with Stafford, really. If Stafford's still bad, it's going to be a bad quarterback. They're going to have to just eat that contract and kind of ride it out with whatever they want to keep.
Yeah.
It's going to be kind of one of those situations, but that was going to be the case anyway, honestly. Like, regardless of how the season went, it was always going to be that kind of outcome, as long as the in-real life outcome was as it seems.
Yeah. I will say that I didn't. They have a second, 2/3, and a fifth this year. So it's not like they're going to be able to bring in some young players this year. It's just like I wonder if there's a few. I wonder if they're like, well, I'm getting to 8-9, 9-8 with this roster. Are there guys I can trade off to get some more draft picks and maybe not hit the full reset, but like it's like you're blowing on the cartridge to just try to get it to work one time.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to do that big cap anyway.
Yeah.
So I hope they're going to be a worse team next year. There's no doubt about it. Like, they're not going to be able to bring. And they already kind of started that. They could have tried to save John Johnson for another year, but really couldn't pay him.
Yeah.
And I took him for cheap, so I was trying to win a Super Bowl this year too. Why not? But it's going to be a lot of the same thing. And honestly, like, they've talked about it before, but like next year is the time that like a Rams or Donald could have to be moved.
Yeah.
Because window's closed and they're still going to get a ton of value. So that is another thing that's out there that is potentially a domino to fall for them.
Yeah.
And honestly, at that point, like, especially if the season isn't ended with Super Bowl, if it ends with Super Bowl, you can't run it back.
Yeah.
Pretty simple. You make a run, you got to try.
Yeah.
And maybe even if you win the NFC, well, shit, maybe we can go again at it. But short of that, it does look like we know where this is heading, cap-wise, draft pick-wise. I think they start to own their own picks again after next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
24 first.
Yeah.
It was a 22 or 23 and 24, or 22 and 23.
2023, they have their second, their third, Vikings third, their fifth. In 2024, they have all of their picks plus the Steelers third.
Okay, yeah, so then that's what it is. This was the last year they didn't have their first. So if there was a market break that they could move on from this window they made for themselves, what was making more, and they tried to open up further. It hurts the cap. It's get draft picks back for the guys who still are worth it.
I will say that I think that like I'm just looking at their roster, like just ideas that I have for them is like it's kind of what we talked about with the cornerbacks. Right now on their roster sheet, they have here's the cornerbacks that they have: Troy Hill, Marvell Tell, Jerry Jacobs, Jalen Ramsey, and David Long. For one, don't spend $3.6 million on Jerry Jacobs, who's a 66 overall. But also, like, the next highest rated cornerback they have behind Jalen Ramsey is Troy Hill, who's 78. And it's like, yeah, you have good safeties in Marcus Williams and who's that? Tart. Yeah, so you have decent safeties, or you have solid safeties, but like that massive drop off in cornerback is just that's the killer. You don't really have a Robin in the secondary in the cornerbacks next to Jalen Ramsey. You have a setup where teams can easily pick you apart because you don't have it. You don't have a slot cornerback really. David Long is a 74 overall, so like you're going into these games with your CB2 just very likely going to be dominated by the other wide receiver, or at least matched. And then your slot cornerback, same thing. Like I don't really know David Long's stats or attributes and stuff like that. So that could be the thing that's holding you back. If you can clean up that cornerback room a bit, I think that you can fix some of this stuff. But like that's just going to be one of those areas that you really have to hone in on, and it's going to be hard to find a really good replacement. But the strategy probably has to be trading Jalen Ramsey and trading him for two cornerbacks who are decent. you know. But so we'll move on now to the Armchair Basketball League. We're kind of in full swing there. The one thing that I wanted to really talk about in the Armchair Basketball League is the Denver Nuggets and the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, the 76ers have come along strong a little bit of late. Looking at the standings right now, they are 7-9, and they were, I think, significantly worse than that like a week ago. They were 5-9 a few days ago, so they won 2 in a row. And then before that, they're 4-9. They were 3-8 like a week ago, so they're 7-9 now. So they've done a bit of a swing, which is good to see. The Denver Nuggets are currently 7-8, and the West is a really tight race. So the question here is, Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic are on expiring contracts. So normally we talk about like our players on the hot seat or our coaches on the hot seat. Are Philly and Denver on the hot seat with Embiid and Jokic, given these early season results?
I mean, definitely. Like,
yeah.
it's better starting to defend. Philly starting to pick it up, so maybe not. But like, I think Philly made some moves last year to try to show something, but Kyle Lowry has not worked out for them.
Yeah.
Their biggest probably move. CJ McCollum for Ben Simmons, that sort of deal is looking nice. Like, but CJ isn't really that type of guy that's gonna want to keep you there. Maxey's been nice, but again, similar to in real life, he's kind of, not that number one guy. So they're probably gonna try to find it with Embiid. And it's just if they don't win if they don't start winning in the East, like I don't see any reason why Embiid would look at that and be like, well, we didn't win it this year. Kyle Lowry's only getting older. CJ's only getting older. And Maxey, while getting younger, what's his ceiling?
Yeah.
Is his ceiling going to be much higher than it is right now? Well, Tobias Harris expiring is kind of a role player for them, and they don't have depth anyway.
Yeah.
So it's...
The thing I'll say about Maxey is I was looking, and he's like an 86 overall. So you keep him around, especially because he's cheap. Like, that's not a guy you're trading. You're looking to trade Tobias Harris. You're looking to trade McCollum or Lowry, or maybe even Tobias Harris or something. Right now they're scheduled to have $7 million in cap space. So if you can find a way to get rid of one of McCollum, Lowry, or Harris without taking like any long-term deal, like you can get an expiring back for one of those guys, you create enough space where maybe you say, hey, look, Embiid, like we're going to try to figure this out this year, but we have a lot of cap space to go chase another superstar or something like that to bring you in. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but because they might have changed it, but I vaguely remember like when LeBron was joining the Heat, it was like they could afford them because they could sign LeBron and Bosh up to the cap. And then, like, let's say they have $0 in cap space, they can still sign Dwayne Wade because they have his bird rights. That's right?
Well, no.
Okay.
Because they had to sign a trade for both those guys.
Okay. I thought they signed them outright. Okay.
No, because Joel Embiid's still going to have the cap hold at basically the max.
Okay.
So you're not, even if you clear Tobias Harris' 39 number, you're still going to have $6 million in cap space or whatever the number ends up being.
Okay.
Because of that. You're going to have, Matisse, none of these other cap holds are really that big. But so they're going to have room to do a sign and trade.
Gotcha. Okay.
But the problem is that you would then have to have the Kyle Lowry in there or something to make the match all that. Like they're going to be below the tax number by enough to do that, and that is probably why you do a Tobias Harris trade if you can.
Yeah.
Or include him in the trade because he's a big expiring.
Yeah.
But you can try to pitch that you can make a move, but then the question becomes, who's the guy in free agency that you can go get to pair with them that isn't already one of them?
Well, the thing is,
like, pitch him on Jokic, right? Like, oh, we'll go try to sign Jokic, but like. Well, Embiid and Jokic together, like, is that going to be what Embiid wants to do? Yeah.
Well, but so here's the other thing, so now that I know that's good to know because I didn't think about that aspect. For some reason, I wasn't really paying attention to basketball when LeBron joined the Heat, so I remember that happening, and I was like, oh, so that was the rule, and I didn't remember them changing that at all. So, but that makes way more sense now. So, the thing is
like
Bosh,
actually, now I think about it. I think Bosh and Wade were outright signings,
and then they signed a trade for LeBron.
I believe so. It was something like that, but like they couldn't get all three. Under the cap, but then they also had to have a team of minimum players for the year afterwards because they couldn't go over the hard cap.
Right.
So
Um,
exactly. That sort of team building, I don't think would work in the ACBL
Yeah.
right now because everything's too deep to do that. Like,
yeah.
you kind of have to have most of it established and then add one.
The one thing,
Like, it's tough.
yeah. The one thing I'll say is that they have. I'm just looking at this. I haven't looked at the protections on it, but it's the roster sheet shows them as having OKC's first this year, their first this year, their first next year. 2025 is not popping up. Then they have 26, 27, 28, 29, their first rounders. So they have their first rounders to trade.
Yeah, they can trade their 2 picks this year,
Yeah.
and then 27 and 29 first.
And CJ McCollum, Kyle Lowry, and Tobias Harris, they're not undesirable contracts because they become expiring contracts after this year. So I wonder if there's like a. I know that the Celtics have shopped Jaylen Brown, and it's a little hard to make a deal with them because you're in the same division, you're in the same conference, and all that stuff. But like Kyle Lowry or CJ McCollum for, and then like a slew of first rounders for, and maybe a young player there for Jaylen Brown or something like that. There is a move out there, and this is where I think like the player rep committee in the ACBL can really become effective by being like, hey, Philly, Joel Embiid does not like how we're performing right now. We need to go out and get another star if you want to entice him to stay. Otherwise, he's not going to re-sign with you right now. He's not going to extend with you. He's going to go test free agency. Basically giving them that ultimatum and then being like, here's some players that we think could work really well. Go try and make a deal happen. You know what I mean? Because I agree with you. Like I don't think there are going to be free agents out there that really fit with Embiid, and that you have to get him now. You don't want him testing free agency. You don't want other people being able to try to recruit him away from you. You want to try to make the move now so that you can entice him to stay and then figure it out after that. Because there are some players available. I have to go through that list again, but there are some interesting players available for them. So I think Philly shouldn't be hitting the panic button yet. I do think that there should be some intervention in here and Embiid trying to create something beneficial for his situation. I think Denver is in a bit more. I know they're pretty much 500, but the West is so tight that like they need to start making something happen pronto.
See, I feel almost the opposite about the Nuggets as I do the Sixers. Because I think the Nuggets, you have the West is really good right now. Like, it's very tough to compete in the West the way it is. But the problem with the Sixers is, like, the East isn't. Like, the East is pretty open. So if you can't compete in the East right now, like, things are looking dire for Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
But I think, like, Jokic, like, relatively wants to stay in Denver.
That's fair.
I don't feel like
Yeah.
they're considered a heavy title contender in real life. And I don't think that they're that much better than this Nuggets team in real life. So it's like, I don't think the situation is all that dissimilar. Siakam gives them a nice ceiling on a good deal.
Yeah.
DeAndre Hunter is a guy they believe in. You can sell DeAndre Hunter as sort of a two-way guy who's playing pretty good in real life, I think, even. And then Desmond Bane is a stud. So, like, I think you can – and they have a similar team, really, to the Sixers, except for Siakam is just kind of the best non-superstar player of these groups. Like, Siakam can help play a lot of defense down low. He's very athletic, perimeter kind of oriented guy, too, that can work well as a cutter with Jokic. I think that pairing works for them. And then I also think that Bane, working off him in the same way that MPJ does, is a great fit next to them as the second highest 3-point rating guy in the league and second highest 3-point percentage in the league as well.
Yeah.
Like right now in the sim. So I think that they've got, like, they don't have depth, but, like, I think they can fix that more easily than Philly can because they have these contracts in the middle that, Kelly Oubre, who will be expiring next year, a Caruso, who won't be expiring at 6.3, and, like, they have a decent amount of draft picks after this year, especially, to get a fourth player or a couple of players who are in the middle rung of that.
That's true.
They aren't on the tax. They're actually under the cap barely. So, like, they'll have tons of flexibility, whereas it's the opposite for Philly.
Yeah, I also was underestimating, like, Jokic in real life seems more like a guy who's like, the Nuggets took a chance on me in the second round, and they've been great in my development as a player, so I like it here. You know what I mean? Whereas, like,
I think
Embiid,
actually similarly for Embiid. I forgot to mention that Embiid, I think, has a certain sort of goodwill towards Philly, but, like, his team situation is more dire compared to the West. So, like, if there's going to be a difference, I think Embiid's the more likely one to be like, this is just not going to work. Like,
I think that, like, there needs to be more intervention from Embiid's side than maybe Jokic's side. But, like, because I think that you're right. Like, they also have more. Denver has more younger options too, where you can be like, all right, well, let's add to this a little bit and let's see how these guys continue to play and develop and stuff like that. Whereas Philly is like, you got 3 guys you have young guys for sure, but you got like McCollum, Lowry, and Harris who are like, they're not going to make nearly as much on their next contracts as they're making right now. And so, like, your future is limited in the sense of, like, these guys are pretty much done after next year. And do I really want to hang around with that?
Yeah. So I think like we talked it through pretty good.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance neither of them go anywhere. A pretty good chance because the money's better and the teams aren't really bad. I think it will end higher right now too.
Yeah.
But I do think there's, if I had to pick one, if I had to bet on one, that'd be just because of the other factors around it. And the West is kind of unsustainable at the level it's at.
Yeah.
But they're very sustainable where they're at.
Yeah.
Like,
I can see that.
For 10 years.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna pivot now to the Armchair Baseball League. Now, I haven't dug too much into this, but
don't worry, I have.
Okay, yeah. So in your new position as the head of the player rep committee, congratulations on that, by the way. Um, who who are the free agents that people should be looking out for? Who are the free agents that are going to make the most noise and that we're going to be talking about over the next month and a half?
So we'll cover the top like four in
Yeah.
my opinion first, and then we'll start talking about a couple of guys that I think could get really paid. The top four are pretty easy. I mean, top three especially pretty easy. Arenado, first off. If I'm predicting where he goes, it's St. Louis. They seem motivated enough to keep him. Obviously, going to the World Series. I don't believe that, and reading into his in real life intentions, that he's going to want to go somewhere. It's going to have to be an insane offer for him to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
It has to be an offer that they won't even get close to matching. But I do expect him to get paid for longer term and more money than his original deal. So that's kind of he just wanted a risk, basically. Like, hey, ACBL, a little crazy. I'm going to reset the third base market. Reasonable, I think.
Yeah.
And I think about where he's going to go. Rodon is interesting because he did not get qualifying offer, which makes his market even crazier than it already would be set to be because you're not going to have to give up a pick for him. You're not going to have to give up a pick for any of these guys.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, going to help make the market kind of go a little bit. I don't think a ton of people are going to care a lot about that, but
because
now they're not going to have to.
I don't think it's you lose a pick. I think that you just.
No, you do. It depends on how much they sign for.
That's right, because you can.
Your tax situation.
That's right. You lose a first round pick or something like that. Yeah.
Which none of us are in the tax.
Yeah.
There's a certain bracket in between that maybe teams could fit into, but I would have lost the third.
Right.
If I sign or not, I lose the third.
Right.
And they gain a certain comp pick depending on how much you sign for, which is likely the first competitive pick round because he's going to sign for boo bucks. But Rodon, I mean, 94 overall in the franchise right now, best pitcher on the market still, even with Sale.
Yeah.
And he is going to get paid a lot of money because of the season last year and everything like that. So I'm expecting him to get a big time deal. Bogarts is interesting because he hit the ball so goddamn well in real life, but the sim didn't quite get there with him. So I can see him. He's like an 82 or 83 or something in that range. I could see him opening next year at an 85 or 86 anyway. Just offseason adjustment. Yeah, we probably should have updated the best hitting shortstop in the league last year. Or top few.
Yeah.
But probably should have updated that guy. So I think he's going to get paid, close to top shortstop money. I don't know if he's going to get truly Correa money.
Yeah.
But he's going to be close, and no qualifying offer. It could be close to that max spot for the shortstop position.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be up there. And then the next one is Sale. He's interesting, right? He's been hurt. Sale and Strasburg are similar, but Sale is better. He has been hurt a lot. I feel like this year was a little bit fluky, his injuries. I think he broke his hand punching something, like a phone or something in the AAA team or some shit like that, if I remember correctly. Maybe that wasn't him. There's some grid. But yeah, I feel it's a little fluky. He's a little bit closer removed from playing that game, and he's a 93 overall. I think that with our system and with him feasibly being able to return to being Chris Sale again, I think he's going to get a big deal. There's a little bit of help around the league flexibility-wise for keeping him at what you need him to be if things start going very south.
Yeah.
So I think that because of those sort of factors, he's going to be in for a big-time deal. Maybe not quite to the level of Rodon, whatever he gets, but pretty close to, because they are pretty similar caliber players in the show. Rodon just would be likely to not need your ratings influence over and over.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
I've got about three guys I want to talk about after this. One of them, and two of them are actually the same. Actually, I'm going to talk about two guys together, and I'll add another two, okay? Steven Strasburg and Jose Berrios. Berrios got bought out, and Strasburg got bought out of their original contracts. And I think both of them should not have gotten bought out. I think both of them would have been traded. Strasburg is a little bit less likely because he was making a fuck ton of money. So maybe not Strasburg. But Strasburg, I think, is going to get a nice deal because he hasn't gotten lowered in 3 years.
Yeah.
He's still 87 overall. He's still playing well in the sim. Injuries are likely in the sim, but not overwhelmingly likely. I think there's going to be a team that needs an ace and is going to take a chance on him for a good amount of money because probably not 35, 30, whatever. It's probably going to be 20, 22 range.
Yeah.
But I think he gets that because he does stuff that guys can't do. He pitches really well in the sim as an ace. He's your game one, hand of the ball in the playoffs type of guy if you need that. So I think he's going to get it from someone. Probably not necessarily a desperate team, but a team that is trying to break through the ceiling of we got to be a playoff team next year.
Yeah.
That's sort of thing you can see doing that because those teams generally don't have aces.
Yeah.
But I see him doing that. And then Jose Berrios had just an atrocious year. I mean, hyped up, expected to do a lot, and then absolutely shit with it. I think that, to a certain extent, people are going to believe he can do better. He's not quite going to be in the same range he signed for, but, to avoid free agency, I think someone would have traded for him.
Yeah.
Traded something for him.
Yeah.
I just think that the Jays maybe missed an opportunity to shop them a little bit because there is no, the deadline for using your buyout is literally the start of the season.
Yeah.
You can just wait and see if you need the money.
Yeah.
Or someone wants to pay him. That's, I feel like, a missed opportunity there. More so than with Strasburg, because Strasburg, I don't think anybody was going to straight that far and trade for him.
Yeah, because it's you're just waiting for that rating to drop. You don't want to be the person that trades for him being like, oh, yeah, they haven't dropped his rating at all. And then all of a sudden, you start the season or you get halfway through the season and the show's like, he's a 78 now.
Yeah. So like you're in with Berrios, you're expecting user rate, right? Like everyone knows the deal with Berrios.
Yeah.
You are hoping that if you pay him big money, he rebounds next year and plays like a good pitcher,
Yeah.
and then you don't always have to use your thing on him. Like you're hoping for with him. And I think that he's young enough and he had such a great season. Like I think that like that high end pitcher is still there. I don't think he lost it all. So I think that he can come back and play better for the Jays going forward and for whoever gets him here going forward. So he's kind of another one of those. Well, inner life is such a huge mess, but I think that
he'll figure it out.
He can figure it out, or at least a team will take the chance on him figuring it out.
Yeah.
And then a couple more I got here. I don't want to go on pitchers, do I? Okay. I like the pitcher market a lot better than I do the hitter market, I guess. All right. T.J. Walker. Solid middle pitcher, but I feel like there are a couple people eyeing him as their number 2 or number 3 and are going to pay him a lot to be that.
Yeah.
And I don't like and that's why like I didn't hate trade because like I don't think the Mets could have afforded him, and maybe that's what you were thinking, you traded him or whatever. But like I feel like he is going to get a good amount of money.
Yeah. I can tell you
honestly.
From what?
The Twins.
Yeah. I can tell you that is definitely one of the reasons we traded him. We were like, he's an expired. We like our shift went to because we decided I was debating on like rebuilding and stuff. Like when we started to lose towards the middle of the season, once Alonso went down, I just didn't have much faith, especially with the way like DeGrom and Scherzer were simming. So I definitely was like, all right, we need to ship out guys who we don't really intend to re-sign. And I thought Walker was a guy who was like, he's good, but I'm not gonna shell out for this kind of a guy. And so it was definitely like cap making moves, which is why we have a lot of cap space now. But that was definitely like I agree with you. I think somebody is going to pay him, and I think that you're probably going to end up being more disappointed than you are vindicated in that the amount that you end up paying him.
I don't know if disappointed would be the word I look for. I don't think it's very high value, whichever number he ends up getting that's higher than maybe it should be. But like I think everybody knows they're going to get. I don't know if a lot of people are going to be like, I expect him to become an ace. That's why I'm paying him.
Yeah.
$20 million.
I think that.
But like, a lot of people are like, well, he's worth 13, but the problem is I don't have anybody worth 6, so I really need to pay him that extra bit to get him in the building.
I think that the thing that I'm concerned about, like this offseason, is when you actually get into the bidding. I think that people don't quite have not a lot of people, and I've been included in this as well, where you start getting into the bidding, you start wanting the player a lot, and you kind of lose track of where the bid is at. You start focusing more on where you are in relation to the other top bid, and that's how the price rises on so many of these players. And because people don't have the discipline or the wherewithal to say, wait a second, we've gone kind of above where I felt comfortable paying for this player, and instead they just double down and they keep like, oh, I want this guy, so I keep bidding. That's where I think, like, and especially because so many teams are going to have a lot of money to spend in the armchair baseball league, that's where I worry that you might see some guys go for like way more than they probably, like almost probably like a 50% markup on probably what they should be worth.
So yeah, that's going to happen a lot. And this is what I have been talking about since the start of the league. That's why I was against the market value caps as they were.
Yeah.
Because the new market value caps, we are only delaying the inevitable.
Yeah.
Like we're only giving and that also makes stars a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
Like every star should be looking at that like, well, I should get 3% more.
Yeah.
Versus if I try to say like you can't go over the max, and that's gonna still happen. There's still gonna be a lot of that, but like there are literally billions of dollars to spend.
Yeah.
Like no one, like no exaggeration, billions of free agent dollars to spend within this single offseason.
Yeah.
So there's gonna have to be some balance of it, right? Like you can't be paying the 70 overall $30 million because you can. Like there's gonna have to be some version of financial discipline here, and not every team's gonna be able to spend the cap.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. But like there is going to be a lot of bad teams that don't want to be bad, paying mid players like great players.
Yeah, and that's like
how it happens all the time in the ACSU anyway.
Yeah.
But it's just it's going to have to happen because if we don't let it happen eventually, we will never like equalize as a market
Yeah.
at any sort of sustainable level.
I 100% agree. It's like it's just one of those areas where you have to be willing to let people make the mistakes and learn from it, because you're not going to learn from it by me and you being like, don't do this. Like we're telling you, don't do this. Like the only way you're going to learn from it is 2 or 3 years from now. You're like, shit, I've painted myself into a corner with these horrible contracts and my reckless spending. How do I fix that next time? And now all of a sudden you have that discipline. You have that ability to be like, okay, I don't want to get in this situation again, so I'm going to be smarter about how I spend my money. But if you force that if you mitigate that out of it, you just have people who are still going to spend recklessly because they're not going to be forced to learn in that situation. They're still going to regret it, but the situation's not going to be so dire that it forces them to really learn that lesson. And there's things that like you can like we've been talking about this in the armchair football league. Like what's going to happen when all these people who have spent recklessly realize how bad it was, and then you have these people who are conservative just profiting off of it and then potentially, hurting the parity in the league. First of all, I'm not too worried about that. We just saw the Saints beat the Rams. So I think the parity's going to be there forcibly because of the video games that we use. But I think that it's like you just have to allow people to to just really learn the lesson for themselves.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a lot of the same thing, but also this feeds into kind of a lot of our discussions we've had with like the ratings boost and stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to limit it over 32 because like you can pay old players for a long time and then keep them,
Yeah.
but like they are going to regress. So it's like to limit that part of it because like I'm fine with paying your arbitration players big deals early
Yeah.
because you think superstars, you're trying to get that discount. Like I started against that, but I think I've come around to yes. I'm fine with that. It's good for the players, good for the team, works out very good.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with like taking a little bit of the lumps with that. Like he goes down, like you can kind of save him for the year and expect him to come back. Like, but like it's just the older players, the Chris Sale.
Yeah.
You give him $200 million over 5 years. Well, I guess whatever. If you give him that amount and he sucks after 2 years, you have to use your one over 32 age upgrade on him every single year.
Yeah.
To keep, you can't have 4 of those guys and save 3 of them. They won't.
No, yeah.
So, like, it balances your team in a certain way. Like, you kind of have to like. You have to be smart about how you spend too. Otherwise, you're going to be throwing money down the drain, which is fine to happen because if you have a lot of money that's thrown down the drain.
Yeah. No, I was with you on that because it's like there feels like there should be more of a gamble when you sign a free agent than when you are paying one of your own players. You know what I mean? Like if you pay a 24-year-old because you think they're gonna be a star and they just don't turn into a star. All right, well, you took the risk, so like there is a penalty for that in the sense that they're gonna regress and you have to use your focus on them and stuff like that. But you get other focuses, so it's not like too detrimental. But if you go out trying to, like you just said, like if you go out trying to sign a 35-year-old free agent for 5 years and they end up bombing, you shouldn't be able to get out of that so easily. Like you shouldn't be able to feel good about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, one second. But I want to talk about one more market here real quick.
Okay.
And that is Josh Bell. I feel like he played the season really well at the end. I feel like he kind of finished the playoffs a little shaky at times, but like I feel like he had a pretty good run with Padres. And at first base, it's pretty big, loaded position here in the Braves. You got Brady and stuff like that. I feel like he can get a nice little deal. I think he is a guy that. Now maybe I've said it out loud, so it's probably not gonna happen.
Yeah.
He could actually be a value sign in the ACBL because like it's just he's not really highly rated, but I feel like he can kind of boost a little bit throughout the year and a rare opportunity for a value signing.
Yeah.
Because like there really is no reason to pay him a ton of money. Like it's got a lot of first baseman out here. He doesn't have like elite hitting stats or nothing. That's like 70 seconds, but like we should pay him like that, like Stanton or something.
Yeah.
But I just think that he's got enough of everything going on that he's only a little bit away from being a true high impact player on your team, a middle of the order bat,
Yeah.
and fielder at first, whatever that's worth.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Is there anything else you wanted to go over?
No, I'm just excited for this to start. This should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, free agency is going to be. This should be. This is always a fun time. The off seasons are always fun in these leagues. I would argue that like the whole purpose of this was the off season, really. So the off seasons typically tend to be more fun than the actual seasons themselves.
Yeah, because the seasons are kind of just like on your head, like please work, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like it's a lot more of like a hopeful, like we can do this, guys. But like there's not things you do during the season. Like,
Yeah.
You make some small moves and stuff, but like you reform your whole damn team in the off season.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got like 15, 40-minute spots open.
Yeah.
You could grind it.
So that pretty much covers it for this week of the Armchair Sports Universe recap. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for more of our games content. Thanks for joining me, Steele.
Hell yeah, no problem.